The fast-paced business world doesn't wait for anyone. For accounting, finance, and accounts payable teams, falling behind just isn't inconvenient, it's costly. What if I told you that fixing just a few common mistakes could save your organization thousands of dollars and countless hours? In this video, we're tackling 3 of the most frustrating, time-consuming challenges you face every day, and we're showing you how to turn them into opportunities for efficiency and innovation. Challenge number 1, the duplicate copies of everything nightmare. Email has made it easy to send multiple copies of just about everything. It's like a digital version of Groundhog Day, but instead of reliving one day, you're reliving the same invoice or document over and over and over again. The most profound example of this is the nightmare of suppliers sending duplicate copies of invoices. In fact, data from AP Now reveals that almost 1/4 of all invoices are sent multiple times. And let's face it, the only thing faster than suppliers sending duplicate invoices is how quickly they forget about that extra payment. Just kidding. While many, but definitely not all, will issue a vendor credit, that too takes additional time to find and process, assuming they're found at all. For the accounts payable staff, duplicates are more than a nuisance. They're a time-draining trap. And let's be honest, when was the last time a supplier eagerly returned an accidental second payment? Solution. But don't worry, there's a way to cut through the clutter and reclaim your team's time. Let's dive into the solutions. Tip number 1, identify the offenders who are sending these duplicates and ask them to stop. You can start with a simple email, and if it continues, pick up the phone and call. Will they stop? Some will, but others, if it's part of their standard operating procedure, they're probably not going to stop just for you. Tip number 2, if applicable, warn them of dire consequences. In the example of invoices, for example, you can point out that they will go on a list of companies whose invoices must always be checked twice before being paid, which will inevitably delay payment. Since their goal is to get paid as quickly as possible, this may work, at least temporarily. Which brings us to our last tip on this issue. Tip number 3, recognize that this will always be an ongoing issue for the foreseeable future. Just because you're able to stop one company from sending duplicates doesn't mean that you've stopped it for good. So stay on top of this issue, even when you think it's solved. Moving on to our next challenge, challenge number 2, death by paper. Let's admit it. Paper has been haunting our desks for decades. Even in the digital age, we're still surrounded by it. But here's the kicker. Too many companies are still printing and mailing checks like it's 1985. Take a look at your own desk. If you're one of the lucky few who has conquered the paper beast, kudos to you. But for the rest of us, me included, let's just say we're a work in progress. The problem is exacerbated when it comes to companies that are still making their majority of their payments using paper checks. Big sigh. While as individuals, most of us have largely gotten away from paper checks, U.S. companies still pay at least 1/3 of their bills using paper checks. That's right, they print and mail checks. This is an extremely inefficient use of the personnel on their accounting and accounts payable staffs. This time could be utilized in much more value-add endeavors. Imagine if your team could spend less time pushing paper and more time on meaningful value-add projects. Sounds good? Let's talk about some solutions. Tip number 1, identify those suppliers still taking checks and contact them directly. They may not realize you're willing to pay electronically. Work to convert as many as possible. Tip number 2, reduce your number of check runs. If you're currently paying once a week, start paying with checks once every 2 weeks while continuing to pay electronically on a weekly basis. Tip number 3, make electronic payments your accepted manner of payment with all new suppliers. Make it difficult for them to get a paper check. Make them ask for it. Of course, you don't want to offend key suppliers. Talk to them and point out the benefits. Tip number 4, only make rush payments electronically. Do not issue any rush paper checks. Now, hopefully you don't do many of these, but this is a good way to convert some of those who are dragging their feet accepting electronic payments. Tip number 5. For those items that are very common and easy to obtain, insist on paying electronically, with the concurrence, by the way, of procurement and management, of course. And now for the challenge that continues to create headaches. Challenge number 3, the technology revolution. Learning about the constantly evolving new technology is a real headache. Where to start? If you're seeing this on YouTube, you can see a cartoon drawn to memorialize one of my first adventures with Zoom. I was talking with my colleagues in the UK, Jamie Radford and Gareth Jones, and I was the one who was upside down. And I could see them laughing hysterically as I tried to right myself. But when I asked Walter Moore, the gifted cartoonist who created the cartoons you're seeing if you're watching this on YouTube, he decided to have some fun at their expense. But it was really me who was upside down. That's the thing about new technology. It's funny until it's frustrating. And it was frustrating that day. And in the business world, keeping up isn't optional. It's essential. Do you remember these days? It was only a few short years ago, and we all had those "I can't hear you, please mute yourself" comments, which we still occasionally have, I might add. 10 years ago, the concept of Zoom or team calls for business on a regular basis was a fantasy. 20 years ago, it was science fiction. But today, it is reality. Today, some, but definitely not all of us, use AI for a variety of tasks. And that number is rising every day. While many of these new applications are user-friendly, they all do require some learning and/or training. And who knows what's next on the horizon. But I do know this. There's more coming. That's part of the reason we created this channel. Please feel free to check out our library of almost 700 videos to find ones to help you with the technology used in accounting, accounts payable, and finance today. These challenges mean that there will be more job changes in the coming months. Companies will look for employees who can address these challenges, and employees who upgrade their skills to address these challenges will be perhaps looking for more challenging and, dare I say, lucrative positions. And that's why we recently put together a short talk on 10 insider tips to ace your next job interview and land a lucrative offer. You can watch it right now using the link that has appeared in your YouTube screen and is in the description. Good luck.